That afternoon, the royal building stood tall in front of the watching people, the sunlight shining on its golden entrance. Visitors from all over the world were in the square, their talking and camera noises blending with the warm summer air. But everyone's eyes kept going back to one person, the King's Guard. He was there, wearing the famous red uniform and tall bearskin hat, standing as still as a statue. You couldn't miss how perfectly still he was, his eyes looking straight ahead, as if the busy people around him weren't there. There was something about his quiet strength that made people look. Parents would put their children in photos, little kids would wave, and some visitors would try to get his attention. But he stayed firm, a living symbol of control. It's funny how people reacted to him. Most watched from a distance, enjoying the moment. But some saw him more as a show than a tradition. They'd do fake salutes or make faces, laughing like it was all just for them. The guard never moved. His complete stillness showed different things in people. Most thought it was amazing, almost magical. But for some, it felt like a test, a chance to see if they could break that famous calmness. It was only a matter of time before someone went too far. The happy feeling in the square changed quickly when a noisy man, Paul, stepped out from the crowd. His loud voice broke through the gentle sounds of visitors and cameras. The afternoon sun made long shadows on the stones as he came out from the people. He was tall and big, with the kind of confidence that comes from years of being the main attraction. His big movements drew everyone's eyes as he got closer to the King's Guard, walking like someone who had never had real trouble for his actions. Behind him, a group of 5 mates, all wearing the same visitor badges, laughed and cheered him on. Their happy shouts, sounding a bit slurred from afternoon drinks, echoed off the old building walls, telling him to go further with his tricks. They had that special look of visitors who thought the whole world was their playground, every new custom just for their amusement. "Go on, mate," called out the tallest of his friends, a red-faced man wearing a sports shirt. "See if he even moves his eyes. These guys are meant to be like statues, right?" Another friend, recording everything on his phone, laughed and said, "Make it good, Paul. This is going to be famous online for sure." Paul, feeling braver because of their cheers, and maybe because of what they'd had to drink earlier, turned to the guard with a smile that showed years of getting away with this kind of thing. His confidence showed in every step, as if he owned not just the square but the building itself. His old jeans, ripped at the knees and worn at the edges, and a creased shirt with the faded picture of a well-known beer, made him look like someone who had never needed to try to fit in. The expensive sunglasses resting on his short hair seemed to finish the look of someone who thought rules were just ideas, meant for others, but never for him. "Look at this guy," Paul said, his voice loud enough to get as much attention as possible, his northern accent carrying across the square. "Standing there all stiff, like he's got a stick up his bum. What's the point of him? Is this how we spend our tax money, eh?" He stepped closer, going into the invisible space of respect that most visitors kept around the guard. The guard's red uniform seemed to shine in the late afternoon sun, the metal buttons bright. Everything about him was perfect and controlled. Paul waved his hand in front of the guard's face, close enough that the guard could feel the air from it, leaning in a bit as if to get a reaction. But the guard stayed perfectly still, his eyes looking straight ahead, past Paul's shoulder, his control as strong as the building walls. The guard's calm reaction, or lack of it, only seemed to make Paul happier, making him more determined to get a reaction. "You know," he said to his growing crowd, waving his arms, "I've heard these guys don't move no matter what you do. They're like machines, made to just stand there looking good in their funny hats." He turned back to his friends who had spread out behind him. "What do you think? Should we try it? See what it takes to make one of Her Majesty's best smile?" His friend's reaction showed the first signs of less confidence. They looked at each other, their earlier boldness going down as they felt the changing mood of the people around them. One of them, a slightly older man wearing a smart outfit that suggested he should know better, mumbled, "Don't go too far, man. They're serious about this stuff. I've heard things." But Paul wasn't listening anymore. The crowd had grown bigger now, many phones held up to record what might happen next, and the attention seemed to make him more excited. He stood taller, spreading his arms wide like a showman at a circus, his voice becoming dramatic as he spoke to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, turning in a full circle to see all the faces, "special visitors and lucky locals, let me show you something unique today. I'll show you how to make a King's Guard move, something many have tried, but few have done." The crowd's reaction was quick and mixed. A feeling of worry spread through the people like a wave. Some parents pulled their children closer, telling them to look away, their faces tight with disapproval. A group of older visitors shook their heads, while others watched with interest, their phones steady and recording, hoping to catch whatever was about to happen. A few teenage girls laughed nervously, while a group of army veterans standing to the side folded their arms, their faces looking serious. Paul, seeing the crowd's reaction as encouragement instead of the warning it was, reached into his old bag with slow, dramatic movements. He pulled out a half-empty water bottle, holding it up like a prize. The plastic made a noise in his hand as he shook it, drops of water catching the sunlight. "You see this, ladies and gents?" he called out, his voice sounding like a street performer. "This is how you make a statue move. This is how you wake up one of these famous guards everyone comes to see." A loud gasp went through the crowd as his plan became clear. The feeling changed, tension in the air like electricity before a storm. Several people shouted in protest, "Don't do it! Show some respect! Someone stop him!" While others looked at each other in horror, unable to believe what they were seeing. But their reactions only seemed to make Paul braver, his smile getting bigger, enjoying the attention like a performer getting his first taste of the spotlight. He opened the bottle cap with slow movements, each turn of the plastic making a quiet clicking sound that seemed very loud in the tense air. Then, taking a step closer to the guard, he held the bottle high above his head, his plan clear. "Let's see if he's really strong," Paul said, his voice showing a bit of victory as he tipped the bottle. The water caught the sunlight as it fell, making a quick rainbow before hitting the guard's clean red uniform, making the material dark and running down the carefully ironed fabric. The crowd's reaction was strong. Gasps and shouts of shock echoed across the square. Parents turned their children away, covering their eyes. Phones recorded everything, their owners unsure whether to record the bad behavior or step in. Several people shouted, "Stop it!" their voices mixing into a chorus of disapproval. But Paul, caught up in his moment of bad fame, didn't stop. He emptied the whole bottle, making sure the guard's uniform was completely wet, before stepping back with a proud laugh that echoed off the building walls. "There we go!" he shouted, throwing his arms out wide like a performer finishing his act. "What do you think, folks? Did I get a reaction? Did I make history today?" He turned in a full circle, playing to his audience, seeming to not notice the horror on their faces. The guard, his once perfect uniform now dark with water, stayed completely still, his calmness unbroken, his eyes looking forward as if nothing had happened. Water dripped from his bearskin hat onto his shoulders, but he might as well have been made of stone. But something about his silence had changed. It was no longer just the controlled quiet of a ceremonial guard. It had become something else, something heavier, more meaningful. The crowd went quiet, feeling the change. The air seemed to get thicker, harder to breathe. Even Paul's friends, who had been laughing and recording moments earlier, began to move uncomfortably, some taking small steps back, moving away from what they now realized might have been a big mistake. Paul, either unable or not wanting to understand the situation, turned back to the guard with a fake smile that didn't quite hide his growing worry. "What's wrong?" he said, his voice shaking a bit, showing his boldness was fading. "Cat got your tongue. Or are you not allowed to talk to someone as important as me? Come on, mate. You must be allowed to at least say thank you for the nice drink." His words echoed in the square, hitting old stones that had seen similar acts of disrespect for hundreds of years. But they didn't get the laughter he had hoped for. The crowd wasn't happy anymore. Instead, there was a clear change in the feeling, a shared holding of breath, a feeling that they were seeing the moment when a line had been crossed. The guard, still silent, took one clear step forward. That single step forward felt like thunder in the quiet square. The sound of the guard's shiny boot hitting the old stones echoed off the building walls with strong finality. Though only a small movement, it carried the weight of hundreds of years of tradition and power. It was small but strong, a clear movement that sent a shock through the crowd, like a stone dropped in still water. Paul, who had been laughing just moments earlier, froze, his fake smile disappearing as he started to realize what he'd done. The king's guard, who had stood still and untouched until now, was no longer just putting up with the disrespect. His controlled silence, which had seemed normal before, now felt full of purpose. The silence that had once made Paul feel brave now felt heavy, like a weight, full of worry. The air was tense, as if the atmosphere had become full of unspoken power. The crowd held their breath, hundreds of eyes fixed on the guard's tall figure. The water still dripped from his uniform, each drop hitting the stones with a sound that seemed very loud in the quiet square. Some visitors whispered to each other in different languages, their voices a mix of nervous excitement, while others held their phones tight, recording every moment of the unfolding event. A young boy with wide eyes pulled at his mother's sleeve, his voice clear in the tense silence. "What's he going to do, Mummy?" But she quickly told him to be quiet, her own face showing interest and worry. Paul tried to get back his quickly disappearing calmness, his voice breaking through the quiet, like a wrong note in a song. "Oh, look!" he called out, trying to keep his role as the square's entertainer, though his laugh now had a nervous sound that showed his growing worry. He finally moved. "What are you going to do now, huh? You can't touch me, you're not allowed. That's the whole point of you, isn't it? Just standing there looking good." His words, though meant to sound confident and uncaring, had a clear shake of uncertainty. Several people shook their heads in disbelief at his continued bad behavior. The guard didn't answer, didn't speak, didn't move, didn't even look at Paul. He simply stood there, straight and tall, despite his wet uniform, his eyes fixed ahead with sharp focus, his presence seeming to grow taller and stronger with each second. It was a silence stronger than any words could have been, a silence that showed power and demanded respect, carrying the full weight of what he represented. The water making his uniform dirty, instead of making him look less important, seemed to make it stand out more, each drop showing his strong control. The crowd's whispers grew louder, their attention moving from Paul to the guard as the power in the square changed. "He's not just standing there anymore," someone whispered in amazement. "Look at him. This isn't over." Others agreed, their worry growing as they watched the guard, whose calm now felt like the moment before a lightning strike. Paul took a step back without thinking, his earlier boldness disappearing like mist. His friends, who had been recording everything on their phones, lowered their phones one by one, some even putting them away in their pockets. "Come on, mate," Paul said, holding his hands up in a way that looked more like giving up. "It was just a joke, yeah. No harm done, right? Everyone's fine, we're all having fun." His voice stopped as he realized no one was laughing anymore. The guard's silence stayed unbroken, but something small changed in his position. With a movement so slight it might have been missed if not for the crowd's focus on his every move, He turned his head just a little bit to the right, just enough to signal to the building security staff standing nearby. The loud gasp that went through the crowd was clear. The movement was tiny, almost unseen, but it carried the weight of a heavy warning. Even those who had been recording lowered their phones, feeling that what was about to happen shouldn't be seen through a screen. 2 uniformed security officers came out from the edges of the square like shadows, their movements exact and purposeful as they walked through the crowd. Their dark uniforms and professional look were very different to the bright uniform of the King's Guard, but their power was just as real. Their presence caused excitement, the whispers growing louder as they got closer to Paul, who now looked as though he wished the stones beneath his feet would open up and take him away. Wait, just a minute," Paul said quickly, his face losing what was left of its color as he held his hands out in protest. "This is all a misunderstanding. It was just water, for goodness sake. It was a joke. Everyone knows these things are just for visitors anyway. I didn't mean anything by it." The security officers moved with the unstoppable certainty of big, moving blocks of ice. The first officer, a tall man with grey hair and eyes that had seen every possible kind of visitor misbehavior, spoke in a voice that was calm but had a hard edge. "Sir, you've crossed a very serious line. Disrespecting a King's Guard isn't just bad judgment, it's against the law." Paul's face, already pale, turned almost white. "Disrespect? Against the law?" His voice broke on the words. "Come on, that's going too far, isn't it? Everyone here saw it. It was harmless. No one got hurt, it's just a uniform. It'll dry." The second officer, younger but just as professional, shook his head with quiet power. "You're not understanding, sir. This isn't about physical harm or wet clothes. It's about respect. Respect for the guard, respect for the uniform, and respect for everything they stand for. That uniform you made dirty has been earned through hundreds of years of service and giving things up." Paul's eyes looked around, desperately looking for support from the crowd, but found only a wall of faces showing disapproval. His friends, who had been so keen in encouraging his tricks earlier, now stood with their backs against the building walls, their eyes looking at their shoes, their phones dark and silent. The ones who had been recording moments ago suddenly seemed interested in the sky, the stones, anything but their friend's problem. As the first officer stepped forward, the metal sound of handcuffs being made ready cut through the tense air. The crowd's reaction was quick. A wave of whispers, a few bursts of approval, and even some soft clapping from those who had been most upset by Paul's show of disrespect. "This is crazy," Paul protested, his voice rising to a near shout as the officers put his hands behind his back. "It was just a joke. You can't actually arrest someone for this. I know my rights." But his protests were lost in the growing noise of the crowd, his words hidden by the shared voice of many visitors and watchers talking about what they'd just seen. The security officers began to lead him away with professional skill, their movements smooth and practiced, suggesting this wasn't the first time they'd had to deal with similar situations. As Paul was led through the parting crowd, a chorus of quiet comments and observations filled the air. The square had become a theatre, and every person watching had something to say about the event they'd just seen. "That's what happens when you think tradition is just for fun," said an older woman with a clear British accent, nodding with satisfaction. "He thought he was above the rules," added a middle-aged visitor with an American accent, shaking his head. "He deserves it. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way." A young boy of about 7 or 8 pulled at his father's sleeve, his face showing confusion and interest. "Daddy, why did they take that man away? He was just playing, wasn't he?" The father, a smart-looking man in his 40s, knelt down beside his son, using the chance to turn the event into a lesson. His voice was gentle but firm as he explained, "Because respect isn't something you can choose, Thomas. That guard isn't standing there as something for visitors to look at or take photos with. He's keeping a tradition that's older than you, me, or even this square. He's protecting something important, not just the building, but the values and history it stands for. And no one, no matter who they think they are, has the right to treat that with disrespect. The child's eyes got bigger with understanding, and he nodded seriously, turning to look at the guard with new respect. Is that why he didn't get angry or shout, even when the man was being nasty? Exactly, his father replied, smiling at his son's understanding. That's what real strength looks like. Nearby, a group of visitors from different countries had formed a discussion circle, sharing quiet words of admiration in a mix of accents and languages. "Did you see how he dealt with it?" said a woman in a colourful dress, her Australian accent full of amazement. Not a word, not a gesture out of place. Just that one step, and everyone knew exactly what it meant. "That's true power," agreed an elderly man who looked like a retired army officer, his manner suggesting personal knowledge of discipline and rules. He didn't need to shout or threaten. His dignity did all the talking needed. I've never seen anything like it. Another woman, adjusting her camera strap thoughtfully, added, "That's what it means to serve with honor, standing your ground without losing your calmness, even when someone tries to annoy you. It's beautiful in a way." The energy in the square had completely changed. What had started as a thoughtless act of disrespect had turned into something completely different, a strong lesson about dignity, discipline, and the quiet strength of tradition. The event had taken away the visitor attraction look from the guard's role, showing the deep well of respect and power that lay beneath the surface. The air itself seemed different now, full of a new understanding of the old traditions being kept on these stones. What many had seen before as just a photo chance had been shown as something much more meaningful, a living symbol of dignity and duty that demanded real respect. Visitors who had seen the situation began to leave, their conversations full of admiration and thought. The King's Guard, standing once again in his calm position, became the symbol of dignity and discipline, a person who had turned a moment of disrespect into a powerful lesson. The event left a mark on everyone who saw it. Groups of visitors stayed near the edges of the square, sharing quiet conversations. "I didn't realize they could actually do something," one man said, his voice showing amazement. "I thought they just stood there, no matter what." "It wasn't just that he did something," his partner replied, looking at the guard. "It was how he did it. Calm, controlled. He showed real strength without ever shouting." Parents knelt to explain the importance of the guard's actions to their children, while others stood in quiet thought. A middle-aged woman with a camera said, "I've been here before, but I've never seen anything like that. It wasn't just his discipline. It was his honor." Nearby, a veteran stood a bit apart from the crowd, his eyes fixed on the guard. His face, showing signs of age, showed a mix of admiration and memories. He had seen bravery in many forms, but today he was reminded that strength often lies in silence and patience. "That's what honor looks like," the veteran murmured to himself, moving his head slightly in silent respect. Despite the stain on his uniform and the weight of the event, the guard's focus never changed. He adjusted his position, standing tall and firm, his expression impossible for an outsider to read. It was as if nothing had happened, but for those who had been there, the guard was no longer just a ceremonial figure. He had shown them the meaning of strength, dignity, and the power of controlled strength. The crowd's energy changed. Where moments earlier there had been tension and annoyance, now there was respect. Phones were raised, not to mock, but to record the guard's calm return to duty. He had become more than a symbol. He was a sign of firmness in a world often quick to react. As the sun went down, its golden light making long shadows across the square, the King's Guard stood firm, a silent protector in the face of a world that had momentarily tested his strength. For those who saw the event, it was more than a show. It was a reminder that true strength doesn't lie in words or getting back at someone, but in the ability to stay calm under pressure. The guard had shown that respect isn't asked for, it's earned through honor, discipline, and firm commitment. The lesson stayed long after the visitors began to leave, fixed in their memories like the golden gates of the building itself. What do you think about the King's Guard's actions? Have you ever seen someone react to disrespect with such quiet strength and calmness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories of strength, discipline, and honor. Until next time, remember, true strength lies in standing tall, letting your actions speak louder than words,